Hello, wonderful child of God. Today we are here to consider the dangers or the havoc associated with being overly familiar. This has to do with dealing with the spirit of over-familiarity. It can be very dangerous and disastrous when you get so familiar with something or with someone so much that you begin to lose consciousness of yourself. Now, when we talk about danger, what are we making reference to? Danger reveals the state where a harm can be caused or a distraction is associated with something. Danger or havoc portrays the picture where you can feel it that the direction which this thing is going will not be favorable. Therefore, when danger is concerned, an unfavorable atmosphere is always created. Now, in the notion of familiarity or being overly familiar, paints the picture of the state where you become so used to something that you begin to lose honor, respect, and value towards that thing. When we talk about being overly familiar or the concept of over familiarity, has to do with being so used to something that you lose focus of the power or the value, the status of that thing or that person. Someone may ask, under what condition will I become overly familiar with something? Get the word straight. Familiar is an import from family. A family paints the picture of a people that are connected in one sense or the other. They might be connected by mission, connected by purpose, connected by blood, or even connected by occupation. The moment you see that you have started associating with people so as to, perform a duty or to be in a family paints a picture of associating yourself with a group for the purpose of an accomplishment. That is, either by employment or by family connection and all that. So you can actually see if a family is mentioned, then the notion of familiar, that is, getting so much used to the people that you are relating with, that have formed a family concept in your mind, so much that you begin to lose the purpose and the reason why that family was created or that group was created. Now, over-familiarity is actually caused largely by excessive closeness in a team. When the closeness becomes too much, the people, one of them, might take advantage of the closeness or of the leniency or the freedom in the group and will extend the mission from the purpose why the group was formed to a personal interaction. That is where most people lose focus of why they are in the group and they begin to deal with people according to their feelings, their emotions, and their own perspective instead of the purpose of the group. Being overly familiar with someone or with something is actually a human nature. When I say it's a human nature, this means that it is part of the nature of man to lose focus easily when he gets to the peak of something. Now, take it, for example, that you keep eating one type of food for a very long time. As time goes on, you will get to the peak called the climax. You will get to the peak of interest when that particular food is concerned. This is painting the picture that you can now predict the food. You can predict the taste. You can predict the quality. When a thing enters into a predictable state, it can invite the spirit of over-familiarity. When somebody gets to know that your expectations can now be calculated, it can introduce the spirit and the attitude of over-familiarity. When people get to the point where they know that they now know everything you know, therefore they have no need of you, they may end up establishing the attitude of over familiarity. This has to do with when you are working or you are moving with people, and this group of people begin to predict you, and always you fall in line with their prediction. They can now set traps for you. And this trap, it is not something which is necessarily going to harm you directly, but it will end up harming you emotionally because you would see your reputation at stake over here. Now, what is this trap about? This trap is such that I know the food you like. I know the way you talk. I know where you will go from here. I know how you think. So if I want to meet you before you escape, that is the trap concept. I will put you in the confinement of my mindset. So I have trapped you mentally. I have trapped you psychologically. Why? Because I am so familiar. I know how you would behave. So I'm too familiar with you. Therefore, I may deliberately create an atmosphere within myself. And I know that you will surely fall into it. This is how familiarity, over familiarity begins. When people know you too much, they can develop the attitude of becoming overly familiar. Now, are there dangers associated? Yes. Being overly familiar with someone or with something comes with serious and heavy-duty dangers, which you may not want to encounter. So we are going to discover some of it, and then we would find remedies of how to prevent yourself from entering into the trap of dealing with people at the overly familiar level, and also those who are receiving the impact of this, how they can also put measures in place for them to avoid the emotional damage that is associated with being overly familiar with someone. Now, the first thing I want us to consider is that being overly familiar has the ability to create emotional distresses, discomforts, and emotional tension in people. When you become too much familiar beyond the necessary point, the people that are receiving the impact of this attitude from you, their emotions get distorted. They feel this tension within themselves because their closeness begins to paint a picture that they are no longer valued by you. So, over familiarity sends signals of rejection and undermining to the people who are in the state of receiving the impact. If I'm to repeat myself again, this is what I mean plainly. If, let's say, for example, somebody is showing me the attitude of over familiarity, I may not be comfortable because I would think or get the emotional tension that my value is dropping, my status is not being considered. And then, the moment that feeling comes up, it's connected to the next thing, which is very dangerous. That has to do with separation. Over familiarity breeds separation, premature termination of friendship, of relationship, of communication. When you become too much familiar with someone and the person does not like it, the next danger it can bring is that it can terminate the connection that you have with the person, especially if the person respects his or her status very much. This is telling you that the moment you sense it, that somebody is making complaints about you not respecting or losing value or respect for his or her status, that is a signal of over familiarity spirit coming towards the person. Quickly, you must know how to deal with the person privately and publicly. Otherwise, it can terminate the relationship that has been established. And mostly when this happens, it destroys and damages the social relations and beautiful coordination that exists between people. If you don't want somebody to break connection with you, learn how to maintain respect, honor for that person at any point in time. do not let the closeness the person has established with you get so much into your head for you to lose the reason why the person connected. Otherwise, you might end up displaying some behavior and attitude that you are not even aware of. One of the dangers of receiving the shocks of overfamiliarity is that it can ruin or destroy your reputation. If you are a man or a woman watching, when somebody gets so much used to you, you can foresee clearly that the person may end up talking to you anyhow. The person can treat you anyhow. The person may just respond to your live calls anyhow. This has to do with your reputation is at stake. If you want to protect and defend your reputation, then do not create so much closeness that will trigger the behavior of people in the direction of becoming overly familiar with you. Now, when overfamiliarity is concerned, one of the dangers is that it prevents productivity. It destroys the efficiency of a person. In the account of Matthew chapter 13, from verse 53 to 58, we can see the story where the family of Jesus Christ got so much used to him because he was part of the family. So they lost purpose and lost value towards Jesus. Because he was part of the family, they were treating him as a normal family person instead of considering who God has given to them. The story tells us that the family of Jesus Christ got so much used to him that they didn't even appreciate the personality of God in their midst. So the Bible says that Jesus could not perform many miracles in his own home. From Nazareth, he could not do many miracles. He couldn't perform many wonders over there. He only did few. This means that when people become overly familiar, your performance is hindered. Jesus could not perform many wonders and many miracles even in his own home. So the Bible says that a prophet is with honor, but except in his own home. This means that his honor is upon him as a prophet, but because of family spirit or familiarity, a prophet loses honor in his home or his background, the people he's connected with. Now, I want us to understand this. When somebody becomes overly familiar with you, it can reduce their faith in you, and it will also prevent your faith from functioning. It is one of the deadliest dangers of becoming overly familiar with someone or with something. When you become overly familiar with a person, it may end up blinding you. And instead of moving in the direction of the status of the person, you will end up behaving and talking with the person and dealing with the person like a family person. By that, you will lose focus of the potentials of that person. So, you may be in a situation where you have a doctor with you, but because you have become overly familiar, when you are not feeling well, you cannot even consult that particular doctor. You would like to be treated by a different external doctor. Why? Because familiarity has blinded you from seeing the potencies of that person. Somebody may be a teacher, but will not be respected in his own home. So if somebody needs knowledge, he or she will not consult the teacher with him. He would love an external teacher to talk to him or her. This means that when over familiarity sets into an organization, the people begin to lose value of the potentialities of the workers. They enter into the atmosphere of needing external workers to come in instead of utilizing the potencies of the organization. It is a dangerous thing to be trapped by the spirit of overfamiliarity. Do not allow overfamiliarity to come into your camp. It may end up destroying your relationship with people because it will destroy your eye from seeing the power in people. The last danger I want us to consider when it comes to being overly familiar is that it violates personal privacy, and then it prevents you from respecting the boundaries people have set for themselves. When you become overfamiliar with someone, you end up losing the personal boundaries that the person has set for himself or herself. It sends you into the position where you can predict people. For instance, you may go to somebody and you wouldn't even call the person to find out whether the person is available or not. But because you have become overly familiar, you just walk into the person's house anytime, anyhow. Why? Because you know he or she is available. Over familiarity prevents you from respecting the borderlines and the privacies people have set for themselves. So you have to be very careful when you are dealing with people. Respect their privacies. Do not consider that because they are available, then I can just walk in at any time. Get to know it. They have a reputation to keep. They have a status to be respected. So the fact that that space has been created for you does not mean that you should take it for granted. Respect people based on the limit they have set for you. And I know that the best will be established when it comes to dealing with people. Now, we are coming to the point where we have to deal with over familiarity. How can you deal with it? Strategically, you must learn how to distance yourself. I call it strategic distancing. When strategic distancing is concerned, this means that you set barriers for people based on how you know they really are. It doesn't mean that distance yourself from people by not communicating with them, not receiving their calls. No. It means that know how every individual deals with you, and then create demarcations and barriers for them according to the nature and the way they are individually. Don't create a general behavior for everybody, because not everybody has the same character display when you are concerned. However, creating strategic distancing should be done with high-level wisdom, because if care is not taken, it can also ruin and destroy your relationship with people. The next thing I want us to know here is that to help deal with the concept of over-familiarity, you have to respect personal spacing and boundaries and the privacies of people. Know how to respect the privacies of people. If you want to visit somebody, call the person to find out whether the person is available or not. If calling will not permit, at least you can go there. However, don't make it a routine that because you went there once and the person was available, then all the time you just run into the person's home without any notification. You are practicing over familiarity here. If the person becomes discomfortable, he or she can block you from coming closer to wherever he or she is. So I want you to know this. If you want to prevent over familiarity, respect the personal privacy people have set for themselves, and also respect the atmosphere of reputation and status. Walk and deal with people according to who they are, not necessarily according to how close they have become with you. Otherwise, even their functionality may not have effect on you. The next way by which you can prevent over familiarity spirit or attitude is respect the emotional interest, the psychological interest, as well as the physical interest of people. Somebody does not feel good when he or she is not being respected. Remember, over familiarity results largely from closeness established between you and somebody. So when that closeness becomes stronger, intimacy becomes stronger, and where there is intimacy, emotions plays a massive role. So respect the emotional needs of people. This has to do with when somebody begins to give out complaints about you not respecting them in quote or giving reverence to their status or their class, it is a signal. Because relationship is established by communication. Remember, when you become overly familiar with someone, it might affect your communication with the person. The way you talk to the person will be affected. So, not to allow the person to emotionally be distressed, always position your communication in a formal, official state according to the way that person will feel comfortable. Learn how to deal with people when friendship is concerned, and also learn how to deal with people when status or responsibility is concerned. Don't say that because I know this person, then I can talk to him or her anyhow at any time. No. Get to know it. When the emotional state and the psychological state of people are concerned, they are always ready to defend. They are always ready to defend themselves. So, you must make sure that you don't do what will cause people to be emotionally attacked. Otherwise, in defending themselves, they will pull away. When over-familiarity is concerned, know how to set boundaries and limits for yourselves. How you deal with a friend shouldn't be the same way you deal with your father. How you deal with your mother should be different from how you deal with somebody's mother. Do not take the attitude of how you deal with your mother to somebody else. Otherwise, that person will tag you to be disrespectful. Maybe you grew up from a home where the families are so much connected. Mothers befriend their daughters, or fathers befriend their sons. So you take that closeness to every place you go. So any matured person you meet, you talk to the person as if you're talking to your father. It can create a huge danger in dealing with people. Get to know it. Other people are not the same as your father. Therefore, give them the official respect. Give them that formal transaction so that they can know that you have the respect that they are looking for. And when people get to know that you respect them, they are ready to open their arms to welcome you, to receive you, to embrace you to the highest height. I want you to take a good notice of what we have discussed, because the concept of over-familiarity is actually destroying the reputation of many people and also causing most people to dishonor people they are supposed to give reverence and respect to. Do not allow over-familiarity to set in. Deal with people according to their status. Place the formalities right, and your relationship with people will forever be good. And that is going to lead to the success of the reason why we created a family. God bless you, and God be with you. Thank you for watching.